angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology, conspiracy, discovery, special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of Skywatch TV. Special Investigative Report.
"2016 is a significant year. There have been prophecies about this year, the time in which we live, going back thousands of years. Welcome to a special investigative report on Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert. Joining me in studio, two best-selling authors who've been conducting a multi-year, multi-part investigation on the days in which we live. And their new book, just about ready to be released, will be the subject of much of what you'll see on Skywatch TV over the next month or so. The book, The Final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, and the Vatican's Last Crusade. We welcome to Skywatch TV Tom Horn and Cris Putnam. Gentlemen, quite an adventure you have led people on through Petrus Romanus, Exo Vaticana, Path of the Immortals, and now The Final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, the Vatican's Last Crusade. For people who are relatively new to Skywatch TV, let's go back to the beginning and kind of lead people through this journey that you guys have been on. How did this all come together? Cris, you want to start with this one? How did these projects actually begin?
Well, Derek, it's great to be back on Skywatch with you. And, it's kind of a strange story. I was finishing up my master's degree in theological studies, and Tom had actually published one of my research papers. It was a critique of Christian transhumanism, and that was in the book Pandemonium's Engine. But that's about all the contact we had ever had, and just kind of an email relationship, and hadn't really met each other or anything yet. And I was looking at the prophecy of the popes, and was really curious why no one was saying anything about it, because the next pope on the list would be the final pope, according to that prophecy. A 900-year-old Catholic prophecy that a lot of Catholics take seriously, and a lot of popes have taken seriously, which makes it even more intriguing. If they believed it, they're supposed to be the infallible spokespersons for the church, right?
Vicar of Christ, yeah.
So you have, popes believing in it, yet at the same time, some of the Jesuits were debating whether it was authentic. And so it was an interesting subject. And, a lot of us feel like the end times are upon us just by the general attitudes and everything that we see in the culture and just the way things are going. And then you have this prophecy saying the final pope is coming up next. And no one was really talking about it. And so I sent Tom an email. What do you think about this prophecy of popes? Because he had quoted it in his book. And, I was thinking, maybe this is my chance to do some writing. So, I suggested that. And then Tom kind of picked up on it. And the rest is history.
Well, there's a lot of intrigue around it because we had only ever had a few email exchanges. We included an article by him in one of the books that we published, which was an anthology. And then we'd never talked on the phone, we'd never met each other. And we probably hadn't even exchanged emails for at least a year or more. And yet on the same day, across the nation, him in North Carolina and me in Idaho, actually getting ready to do the Strategic Perspectives Conference, got into this long discussion about why nobody had published, a real investigative work on this allegedly 900-year-old prophecy that was sacred to the Catholics, right? Knowing that whoever replaced Benedict would be the final one on this list, and that final one sounded very much like he's either the Antichrist or the false prophet, right? So I was shocked by that. So I'm downstairs at the Strategic Perspectives. Joe and I are talking about it. I made some notes, and I said to Joe, I'm going to go up to my room, my hotel room. I'm going to email this to myself so that when I get home, I'm going to consider maybe writing a book on this. So I go up, I open my email up, and here's an email from Cris Putnam saying, hey, I would like to talk to you about the prophecy of the Pope. So I emailed him back and said, Cris, you cannot believe the timing, right? But that was only the first of really a whole series of supernatural, almost spooky kind of events, preternatural events unfolding one after the other. By the way, Cris is sitting here today, and we would want the public to know that Cris is going to be joining the Skywatch Television news team. He will be producing original television. He'll be on the set from time to time. He's also going to help us with additional writing. But Cris had a dream years ago, before we ever even started talking about building Skywatch Television, in which, well, you tell him what you saw.
It's really kind of unusual, Tom. It was around 2011, 2012, right when we started this project. I had a dream that basically I was on TV, like a news anchor, is kind of the way that the dream was. And for some reason, it was like a huge explosion or an earthquake in the Middle East. And all my coworkers, and I didn't know who these people were in the dream. It was just kind of vague, but everyone was cheering, and we believed that Jesus was coming back. The end times had started. Something, clued us in. We thought the sixth seal had broken, something of that nature, and we were all celebrating. And it was really odd. I was on television, and I was working for you. Yeah,
so he not only saw himself sitting here doing television, but he knew it was a TV network that was owned by Thomas Horn. And this before we ever even started talking about this. So that's just a couple of things. The new book, by the way, has the biggest predictions we've ever made in it. And so over the series of weeks, as we're talking about this new investigative report, we'll get to some of those too, that are additionally very interesting and very supernatural.
Well, and because the two of you actually predicted the resignation of Pope Benedict before a year in advance. And this was something that hadn't happened in hundreds of years in the Roman Catholic Church. Typically, a pope serves until he dies.
Right.
What was it about the prophecy of the popes? And this goes back to St. Malachi, an Irish monk. What was it that you saw in the prophecy of the popes that led you to conclude that Benedict was not, that he had a certain end date, an expiration date on his papacy?
It wasn't specifically the prophecy of the popes that clued me into that. It was the work of a Jesuit who was an ardent believer in that prophecy, and his name was René Thibault. And he wrote a book, The Mysterious Prophecy of the Popes. Now, it was written in French, but I translated it and read it. He firmly believed that the final pope would arrive in the year 2012. Now, the thing that makes that more intriguing is that book is copyrighted 1951. All right, nobody was talking about 2012. There was no Mayan prophecy that anyone was mentioning. None of that. So that was really odd that lined up with this year that everyone was talking about so apocalyptically. And so René Thibault says the final popes arrived in 2012. So Benedict has to be out of the way, right? And based on that, and some rumors about his health conditions and things like that, we went ahead and went on a limb, basically giving our book a 1-month shelf life. If we were wrong, right? Yeah. And it looked like that was the case at first, and then
it was actually kind of funny because we went on Sid Roth's It's Supernatural, went on Jim Bakker's program. So we're out there on some of the largest Christian television programs in the world. And we're saying that based on these calculations that Cris had uncovered, that this Belgian Jesuit, 63, now 64 years ago, thought that, who would be Gloria Alve, so Pope Benedict, would step out of the way in 2012. Well, that was one thing, and there was some other calculations that we did. So in our book, Petrus Romanus, we actually said we believe that Benedict will step down in April of 2012. And, people were saying that's never going to happen. Well, the book was only in print for a month or so, even though we were on television talking about it earlier than that. And April came and went, and Benedict didn't step down. And so I kept sending Cris these different emails, and I'd say something like, well, it's not over till it's over. And as soon as I'd hit send, I'd say, what in the world are you talking about? It's not over till it's over. We're at the end of 2012. Benedict is still there. But then, of course, February 28th, 2013, the Vatican announces that Benedict has resigned, but then they give an interview with the El Observatorio Romano, their official newspaper, gave an interview with the New York Times in which they admitted that Pope Benedict had actually officially resigned at the end of a trip when he returned at the end of March to the Vatican, and the beginning of April he resigned to the Curia in secrecy. And in fact, they wouldn't even let the other cardinals know about it. It was just a handful of people that they believed could keep secrets. because remember at that time, they were in the middle of the whole WikiLeaks thing, and they were trying to put a lid on secrets at the Vatican. But we found out that we were exactly right. Thibault was right, Putnam was right, I was right. And people can go to to YouTube, and they can see programs in 2012, early in the year, and even late 2011, in which we're talking about our prediction that not only could we, but we believed he was going to. Well, then, of course, the phone started ringing off the hook. We had people in Rome even that wanted to know, who is your insider at the Vatican? Because there was no way you could predict this with the whole world telling you that's never going to happen. And then, of course, it did.
Well, we'll continue this discussion here and get into some of the connections between the Vatican and some of the fascinating work that you uncovered as your investigation continued into the extraterrestrial connection and the Vatican's seeming fascination with something that they think is coming, perhaps from out there. But we want to talk about the biggest giveaway of 2016. Tom, as publisher of Defender Publishing, CEO of Defender Publishing, you've kind of developed a reputation when you put out a major book like The Final Roman Emperor, The Islamic Antichrist, The Vatican's Last Crusade, of giving people a lot more for their money than they can get anywhere else. You've got a few different products here. I want to talk about these because you selected these directly. I mean, first one, of course, is Cris, your presentation on the Vatican's astrobiology connection, astrobiology and the Vatican ET connection, a video presentation. But these books, Tom, Satan, You Can't Have My Promises, Satan's Dirty Little Secret, What Happens When I Die, and Becoming a Prayer Warrior. You selected these books as, and of course, these will go to people while supplies last, once the book goes on sale. Why did you select these titles in particular?
Yeah, well, those in particular because, and that's, that'll cover, we bought a lot of pallets, that'll cover the first few thousand or whatever orders that come in, and then if we do run out, they'll replace those with books of equal value. But I picked those in particular because when people read this final entry, and we never did plan, we didn't even plan 2 books, let alone 4, it's just where the investigation took us, we had to go there. They'll understand why we believe the church needs to learn how to pray. And so these books very specifically teach you how to overcome evil, how to pray effectively. In fact, one of those books is considered one of the best books ever written on the subject of spiritual warfare. And so I picked those on purpose. Now, in addition to those books, we are also going to be giving away 2 mystery books. We always do this, right? And these are the books that are in our pallets. They're in our overstock. We've still got, for instance, some of the King James Version Bibles. This is a 15 disc set. This originally sold for $50 retail by itself. We still have some of those. We still have Survive the Unthinkable, which is a woman's self-protection book. Some of the books like The Labyrinth by Mark Flynn. We're going to hope to have Mark Flynn on our program before long. We actually have some David Flynn collection books that are now in overstock, the George Pember collection, other books. So the mystery books, they won't know what they're going to get, but there's probably a $40 value or something there. Altogether, it'll be over $150. It'll be the biggest giveaway of 2016 for a limited time.
We'll tell you more about that in just a second here. The Final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, and the Vatican's Last Crusade. Our conversation continues with Tom Horn and Cris Putnam next.
In 2012, they shocked the international community when they predicted the resignation of Pope Benedict 1 year in advance.
Breaking news, Pope Benedict XVI announces his resignation.
Yeah, it is the first time in centuries a pope has stepped down.
And I knew Pope Benedict was going to step down April 2012.
Leaving the world wondering just who their insider at the Vatican really was. In 2013, they exposed the mysteries of Mount Graham, the Lucifer device,
This first station is an instrument called Lucifer.
and the Vatican's secret plan for the arrival of an alien savior. Then in 2015, they took the world underground to uncover the truth behind the Native American legends of giants, the portals they once came through, and the most overlooked aspect of end times prophecy regarding their return. Now, in their final entry to the explosive 4-year investigation, internationally acclaimed best-selling authors Thomas Horn and Cris Putnam unveil their greatest discovery and make their most astonishing prediction yet, involving the imminent prophesied arrival of a mysterious final Roman emperor.
At that time, the prince of injustice, who will be called the Antichrist, will rise. He will be the son of perdition and the culmination of pride. He will deceive many, but when the Roman Empire will fall, then the Antichrist will show himself, and he will sit in the house of God in Jerusalem. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that brought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone.
Thomas Horn, Cris Putnam. This will be the final entry and the greatest prediction yet, coming May 2016. The final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, and the Vatican's last crusade. Coming exclusively from Skywatch TV for a very limited time starting May 31st, 2016. When you purchase the new book and final report from Tom Horn and Cris Putnam, The Final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, and the Vatican's Last Crusade, you'll receive the largest giveaway of 2016, an unprecedented value of over $200 in free books, DVDs, audio files, and a data DVD library with tens of thousands of pages of ancient literature no longer available, as well as movies, WikiLeaks files the government does not want you to see, and more for your library or to give away as gifts. Included in this biggest giveaway of 2016 are Cris Putnam's full-length DVD presentation, Astrobiology and the Vatican ET Connection, the new 5-part Skywatch TV special investigative report on the book, The Final Roman Emperor, plus 2 mystery books with a $40 value, and a data DVD library with thousands of pages of ancient literature, movies, and audio series for your library or to give away as gifts. And for the first several thousand customers while supplies last, you'll also receive Satan's Dirty Little Secret, the 2 demon spirits that all demons get their strength from. Satan, You Can't Have My Promises, the spiritual warfare guide to reclaim what's yours. What Happens When I Die, true stories of the afterlife and what they tell us about eternity. Becoming a Prayer Warrior, a guide to effective and powerful prayer. An unprecedented value of over $200 in never-before-offered free products. And the biggest giveaway of 2016, yours absolutely free when you purchase The Final Roman Emperor from skywatchtv.com for only $19.95 plus shipping, beginning May 31st. But be advised, this astonishing promotion is limited to first come, first serve while supplies last. So it's urgent, beginning May 31st, 2016. You place your order for the final book and biggest prediction yet in this 4-year investigation by internationally acclaimed best-selling authors Tom Horn and Cris Putnam. The Final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, and the Vatican's Last Crusade for only $19.95 plus shipping. This offer is on a limited time basis and will end without notification. So be sure to visit skywatchtv.com to follow the updates in the countdown to the biggest giveaway of 2016. Order the new book by Tom Horn and Cris Putnam on May 31st to receive the unprecedented value of over $200 while supplies last. Free products limited to quantity on hand and may be replaced by products of equal value.
Skywatch TV's special investigative report continues. The Final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, and the Vatican's Last Crusade. Cris Putnam and Tom Horn joining us. Cris, the investigation that you began with the prophecy of the popes led you somehow into the Vatican's connection with extraterrestrials. or the possibility of the existence of extraterrestrials. How did that, the one lead to the other?
Well, that's another interesting story. You know, I've always been interested in the topic of UFOs and those things. And, you know, even before I was a Christian, you know, I was interested in, as I had collected newspaper articles, even when I was like 10 years old on that subject. But if you look at what the Jesuit astronomers are saying in public, it's rather astounding. You could look right on the internet, there's plenty of articles about baptizing extraterrestrials into the Catholic Church. And what an unusual idea that is. When most people are still discussing whether they exist or not, they're talking about baptizing them. Do they know something we don't? Are they expecting something?
Yeah.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what business does the Roman Catholic Church have doing astronomy anyway? I mean, why do they have an observatory?
It would seem to fall outside the Great Commission of making disciples of all nations. Yeah.
Well, I think making disciples of all worlds is what it's become now.
Yeah. Well, and so because around the same time that our book Petrus Romanus came out and we were doing all these TV and radio programs, around that same time, some of the Vatican's top astronomers, Jose Gabriel Funes, who at that time was the head of the Vatican Observatory Research Group, what he calls the Borg, and he had fun with that, the Borg, comparing them to the Borg in our book. But he was out there, also Brother Guy Consolmagno, who, by the way, now is the new leader of the Observatory Research Group. They were out there saying, we'll baptize aliens. But then they started saying something even more curious. They were saying, there's nothing wrong in believing in extraterrestrial life, that is not a conflict with the Catholic faith. But then they took it a different step and they started saying, not only is it not wrong, they said the real heresy is in not believing in extraterrestrial life because it puts limits on God's creative ability. Then they started saying things, this goes kind of back to what you just said, do they think they know something we don't know? They started saying it's more likely than not that there are intelligent extraterrestrial life, not just organisms on another planet. And they just kind of kept ratcheting it up until finally some of their top, we're talking Opus Dei level theologians for the church, saying that furthermore, not only are they likely to exist, but they could be morally superior to us, because what we know about us is that we are fallen. Right. But if they're unfallen, then they're closer to the Creator than we are and would have a clearer revelation about God, about the Trinity, and about the gospel. And now they're literally writing papers that are going through the review process that suggest that they may come here and it won't be us baptizing them, it's going to be them baptizing us into a corrected version of the gospel. Again, we're talking about the Pope's top theologians who are writing this stuff. A
corrected version of the gospel?
A corrected version that's going to require us, they say, to rethink everything we've ever thought we knew about the gospel. And they expect it. So anyway, so we're out there, and now people are calling. And they're saying, what do you guys make, because you're talking about the Vatican, you're talking about the Pope, what do you guys make of what the Vatican is saying about extraterrestrials? And what we knew was, if we were going to have a clear and authoritative answer, only one way we were going to be able to do that, we had to get to the top of Mount Graham in Arizona, because that, you know, ever since Malachi Martin was interviewed on late night talk radio on Coast to Coast AM by Art Bell back in the 90s, and Art Bell said to him, why did the Vatican force themselves onto a mountain in southeastern Arizona?
Over the objection of the locals.
Well, over the objection of environmentalists, the native people. So they literally did force themselves through federal court. In fact, it was granted by fiat, and Cris did a great deal of research into that. We knew we had to get up there because that's where Malachi Martin said, why are they on that mountain? He said, because at the highest levels of Vatican governance and jurisprudence, he said they know what is approaching the earth and that it will be of the utmost importance in coming years. Now, there were other Catholics that say he's just making this stuff up, but keep in mind, Malachi was the one who was conveying a whole lot of stuff that later on turned out to be absolutely true. The pedophilism that was going on, the Luciferianism, stuff that was conveyed to be true by him at the time that sounded outlandish. So the longer Malachi Martin is dead, the more the credibility goes up. So if that's also true about Mount Graham, then the church is watching something that is approaching the earth. So we're probably going to have to talk about that in the next program, but we went out of our way and we were able to get up onto Mount Graham to meet with the Jesuit who was on duty and actually to see everything up there.
So they're actually looking, though, at the possibility that, and making the claim that perhaps what we've known the gospel to be for 2,000 years is incomplete, not absolutely correct.
In the paper that Tom's talking about, they said that, we're going to have to do a rereading of our scriptures based on this new information from the extraterrestrials, and it specifically says that, and it's something that they're actively discussing. And,
that is astonishing.
And the Vatican's having astrobiology conferences, in Rome. They had one in America last year, with the top secular astrobiologists. So astrobiology, what is that? Astronomy married with biology, life in space, the study of life in space. Now, we don't really know of any life in space, so
Yeah.
I find it kind of amusing that you can get a PhD in something that you have nothing to study.
Yeah, a scientific discipline in search of something to study.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there's more to it clearly than just science, though, because obviously we're dealing with a supernatural, a spiritual aspect here. I mean, supernatural. Well, as we've said before, as Christians by default, we believe in the supernatural realm. And there's got to be more to it than this. Now, we've only got about a minute left, so we'll have to continue this in our next discussion. But is there more to the emphasis on Mount Graham? In other words, why that specific location than just a really good place to see the stars? Is there more to it than that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that more in our next program because there's not really time to develop that here, but we at least wanted to leave you with that little bit of tease. There's more to it. What is it about Mount Graham and perhaps other high places, and I use that phrase deliberately, around planet Earth? Our special investigative report on the final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, and the Vatican's last crusade continues. And again, Tom, in just about a minute's time, just touch again on when folks order this book. First, when will it be available and how much product are you including with the book?
Yeah, it's going to be available the third week of May. So right at the time when these programs are broadcasting, that'll be the time when the book will be released. And if they watch the commercial, it's got the date on it for the actual release date. Couldn't be more excited about it. But this book really is the tour de force. That's the other part of this whole series. Petrus Romanus started out strong. Exa Vaticana was even stronger. Path of the Immortals took us places we never expected to go. But wait until people read this book because it is a bombshell.
Well, it is timely because the headlines and the image on the graphic on the cover showing the Islamic State's flag flying from the obelisk in St. Peter's Square hints at the subject material of the book, and we will cover that as our special investigative report into the final Roman Emperor, the Islamic Antichrist, and the Vatican's last crusade continues. For Tom Horn, Cris Putnam, I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is Skywatch TV.